Thank you, Hans. Thank you, Ron. It's a great pleasure to join my esteemed colleagues for our biennial plenary. The topic of this session is near and dear to my hearts, and I'm really delighted to participate. I'm very sorry I'm unable to be there in person. I'm in New York City for the UN General Assembly and New York Climate Week. I speak to you today not only as an academician, but also in my official capacity as the Deputy Director for Climate and Environment at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. And my remarks build on the wonderful summit from climate crisis to climate resilience and the mast framing that Ram mentioned. What I want to focus on today, though, is the need for more holistic policies as solutions to the interconnected triple global challenges of climate change, loss of biodiversity, and inequity and inequality. Now, each of these crises threatens our future. Ram and Hans have focused on climate. They know full well that climate is connected to biodiversity and to inequity. But each of these challenges is typically tackled with an intense focus on understanding the complex drivers of the problem and identifying solutions that are politically, economically, socially, and technologically feasible. Each of these topics or challenges has its own global community of experts and policymakers. However, as Hans has just suggested, scientific knowledge tells us that three challenges are inextricably linked and that solutions to one will not succeed unless they are integrated to address all three challenges, climate, nature, and equity, together. Policy doesn't typically do that, and achieving that integration is far from easy, but I believe it's high time for policy to reflect this scientific knowledge through more holistic, integrated climate change, biodiversity, and environmental justice policies and practices. This integration requires more holistic approaches to both the overarching aspirational framing policies, as well as the policies that are specific to individual issues or sectors. Both the general and the specific policies are important, but they must be complementary and mutually reinforcing. So the integration needs to be from the outset, not something that's tacked on afterward. What I'd like to do now is to share with you a few of the ways that the US is working toward this holistic integrated approach to climate, biodiversity, and EJ under and listen to scientists. And although the pioneering policies I'll describe are enabling bold and very ambitious action, we know full well that they are only a down payment on what is needed. Much more action, much more ambition is warranted for the reasons that both of my colleagues just articulated. Nonetheless, these policies and others that are underway around the world give us direction and hope that we may be able to accelerate progress to achieve sustainability and well-being in the Anthropocene. So how do we connect solutions to climate change, loss of biodiversity, and environmental justice? Here are the two primary approaches that we are taking. One is to embed nature and environmental justice into climate policy. President Biden and Vice President Harris have led the most ambitious climate agenda in US history, including over an astonishing $369 billion in climate and clean energy through the Inflation Reduction Act. The policies and the funding to make those policies a reality are multifaceted, and they reflect the broader, more holistic climate policy framing that scientists have championed. And here are just three examples of that. One is focusing on both mitigation and adaptation along the lines of the mast framing. Most climate policies have emphasized ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but ignored the importance of adapting to climate changes already underway. It's imperative that we both avoid the unmanageable through emission reduction and carbon removals, but also that we manage the unavoidable through more effective attention to adaptation and building resilience in our planning. This is not an either or, but a both and approach. Adaptation is an excellent opportunity to integrate nature and environmental justice into climate solutions. For example, the U.S. National Climate Resilience Framework highlighted multiple opportunities for integration and set in motion significant efforts to provide tribes, communities, and businesses with the information and resources they need to adapt to climate changes. The Inflation Reduction Act includes over $2.6 billion to build resilience of coastal communities, including through nature-based solutions. Environmental justice is embedded across all of these policies with the administration's Justice 40 initiative, in which 40% of the overall benefits of federal climate and clean energy investments flow to disadvantaged communities that are marginalized by underinvestment and overburdened by pollution. So these are a good start, but much more is needed to make communities more resilient. Coping with heat stress needs to be one of the highest priorities for communities around the world, and a perfect opportunity for connecting the dots between nature and environmental justice. Another prime opportunity is to make food systems on land and in the ocean climate ready. Number two, focusing on technology and nature-based solutions. Now, when most policymakers think emissions reductions or carbon removal, the default solution is usually technology. Indeed, technology has a key role to play, but so too do nature-based solutions. We know that the natural world on land and in the ocean is a powerful ally and could contribute as much as 1/3 of the greenhouse gas reductions needed. But nature-based solutions are less while better known or better marketed tech solutions take off. So people embrace the idea, but then it falls short when it comes to execution. To help address this disparity, the White House produced a nature-based roadmap to guide U.S. action. Now, this roadmap identified a number of key impediments to the use of nature-based solutions and recommended ways to overcome or actually remove those impediments. Since its inception, or since its release in 2022, this roadmap has guided strategic action, including a number of new policies and enhanced awareness and funding for nature-based solutions. A major impediment to the use of nature-based solutions that has now been removed is the way that federal agencies calculate the benefits and costs of actions they take. Federal agencies are required by law in the United States to do this benefit cost analysis on all of their major decisions. But until last year, that benefit cost analysis was lopsided. Until last year, the calculations did not include the benefits that nature provides. For example, trees lowering air temperatures in cities, or coastal wetlands reducing storm surge, or forests or wetland swales mitigating floods. Last year, that changed dramatically. The official instructions to federal agencies about benefit cost analysis were modernized to align with our current scientific understanding and economic tools. And as a result, federal agencies are now required to include nature's benefits, ecosystem services, in their benefit cost analysis. Moreover, the agencies now have guidance about how to value those ecosystem services in their calculations. And the result is that nature-based solutions are beginning to move to the forefront as climate solutions for both mitigation and adaptation, putting nature to work. And I'm envisioning Hans's flat line curving around with nature and high tech coming together. I really love that, Hans. Nature-based solutions feature prominently in the Justice 40 initiative actions that I mentioned, bringing equity, climate, and nature together. And my third example is focusing on land-based and ocean-based actions. Now, because we live on land, we tend to focus on land-based actions, and yet we know from scientific syntheses that the ocean is a powerful source of solutions to climate change. Acting on that science, the U.S. produced its Ocean Climate Action Plan, released a year and a half ago now. This plan highlights the immense potential for offshore wind, green shipping, and nature-based solutions in the ocean like blue carbon to reduce emissions, absorb carbon, and enhance resilience. This Ocean Climate Action Plan has attracted attention of a number of other nations who are considering similar approaches. Complementing the Justice 40 initiative and our Ocean Climate Action Plan, we developed an ocean justice strategy, drawing attention to the goal of everyone having a voice and everyone benefiting from climate actions. So as you can see, we are making good headway in integrating nature and EJ into climate practices and policies. My second example is embedding climate and EJ into nature policies. And in this case, through efforts to integrate them. Now, because we understand that nature underpins our economy, our health, our well-being, and national security, we seek to bring a more holistic perspective to addressing the precipitous loss of biodiversity, the loss of nature. Most conservation action globally focuses on protected areas. Countries are pursuing both national and global pledges to protect 30% of lands and the ocean by 2030. Extensive scientific analyses conclude that protected areas can indeed help recover and protect precious biodiversity and ecosystem functioning, but only if those protected areas are well-designed, resourced, supported locally, enforced, and adaptively managed. However, we are far from achieving that 30%, and far too many of the existing protected areas do not meet the criteria I noted. Nonetheless, renewed efforts are underway through Sustainable Development Goals and the upcoming Convention on Biological Diversity, COP16, to accelerate protected area progress on land and in the ocean. However, unless we also address threats to biodiversity in the other 70% of the planet, those protected areas in the 30 won't be able to stem the loss of biodiversity. And this is why the US government is taking a 30% plus 70% approach with parallel efforts on protected areas in the 30% and other measures in the 70%. President Biden's America the Beautiful initiative focuses on the 30%, and he has made significant progress in creating or expanding existing protected areas on land and in the ocean that the US has jurisdiction over. To focus on the other 70% and address the underlying drivers of biodiversity loss, we're taking a number of innovative approaches. Number one, we're connecting the dots between nature and the economy. We know full well that the economy depends on nature, but our economic indicators fail to provide any information about the state of nature. It's absent from our major economic indicators. Therefore, we are in the process of putting nature on the economic balance sheet of the country through natural capital accounts and associated environmental economic statistics. Number two, we are connecting the dots between nature and national security. In the Biden-Harris administration's national security strategy, biodiversity and climate change are mentioned for the first time and are identified as key components of what we call natural security. So we're focused on national security through the concept of natural security. Both climate change and loss of biodiversity, whether on land or in the ocean, can threaten food security, trigger civil unrest, and lead to human migrations. Wildlife trafficking wildlife trafficking and illegal fishing are other good examples of the intersection between nature and security, and both also intersect with equity through forced labor and drug trafficking, for example. And of course, both are exacerbated by climate change. And number three, we have initiated the US's first ever scientific assessment of the state of nature in the US. Due out in 2026, our National Nature Assessment will assess how nature in the US is changing, what that means, and what options exist. This National Nature Assessment will demonstrate how nature connects to our health, to climate change, to equity, to the economy, and to national security. And so, across all of these efforts, we seek policies that align with scientific knowledge in understanding the intimate connections between climate change, loss of biodiversity, and inequity and inequality. I've shared some of the ways in which we're integrating nature and environmental justice into climate solutions, and ways that we are weaving environmental justice and climate into biodiversity efforts. We believe this integration will enhance efforts across all three areas and together deliver more durable and successful outcomes in the Anthropocene. Let me end by echoing Ram's and Hans's focus on urgency of accelerating these and other efforts. We've just ended a summer defined by the climate crisis. 2023 was the hottest year in history, and 2024 is on track to be hotter, with devastating consequences to people around the world. From May 4th, 2023 to May 4th, 2024, every single day broke global sea surface temperature records. We are indeed in a no analog world. And I hope that the examples I've provided will help encourage other more integrated approaches that meet the moment and heeding the scientific findings with all their concomitant urgency to integrate climate, nature, and environmental justice solutions. Thank you.